Okay, so let's start with meditation. So last week I gave a kind of general introduction to some Buddhist ideas, for example, about the mind. What is the mind and how it's possible to change the mind. And so there's a little meditation that I like to do related to that topic, just to sort of check our own experiences about our mind and how our mind works. And hopefully this can open up our mind to the Buddhist explanation, because it's one really important idea in Buddhism is that it's possible to change our mind. We can work on our mind and change our mind. And for some people, that may not be surprising. You might already believe that, accept that. But for some people, it might be a new idea and maybe challenging, because some people might think, well, this is how I am. I've always been this way and I can't change. So what's the point in even trying? And it's understandable that people might think that way, you know, if they look back over their life and maybe they have been angry their whole life, or they've been anxious, or they've been depressed, or whatever, you know, they have certain characteristics, certain qualities that seem to have been there their entire life. And they may have even tried changing those things and were unsuccessful. And so then they've just kind of given up and resigned themselves to thinking, well, this is just how I am and I can't be any different. I can't change. So Buddhism says that's not true. We can change. It doesn't mean we can change overnight, just like that, but slowly over time, it is possible to change. And I really believe that, mainly because it's my experience. It's not just belief, but it's something I can see in my own experience, that I've changed after learning Buddhism and practicing Buddhism. I mean, I still have a long way to go, but I can definitely say that I have changed for the better, I think. Not for the worse, but for the better. And so I really do believe it's possible. So this little meditation can kind of explore that idea. So I invite you to get into a comfortable position. Probably most of you are sitting on a chair, or maybe some of you are sitting on a cushion on the floor. So however you're sitting, try to be comfortable. But at the same time, if you can, keep your back straight, because keeping our back straight helps our mind to be more clear and alert and awake. And it's easier to focus rather than sitting in a slouched way or in a crooked way. Yeah, so try to keep your spine straight. But at the same time, be relaxed. Let your shoulders relax. If there's any tension in your shoulders or any other place in your body, see if you can just consciously let go of that tension. You could imagine that it becomes like liquid and then flows out of you and sinks into the ground below you. Or another way of releasing tension is, imagine that when you inhale, you're breathing in, and imagine the air goes to the place of tension in your body. and it loosens the tension, relaxes the tension, allowing it to disappear. And also let go of any tension may be in your mind. So we're approaching the end of the day, and you may have had a busy day, or you may have had things happening during the day that were upsetting. So if you do have any leftover thoughts or feelings related to things that happened today or any other day in the past, see if you can let those go, put them aside for now. And let your awareness be right here in the present moment, in the present place, wherever you are. And a good way of being in the present is to be with our breathing. Just be aware of the breath coming in and going out. We often take our breath for granted. It's really precious, because if we didn't breathe, we wouldn't be alive. So breathing is life. So just let your mind, your awareness be with your breathing, with your breath coming in and going out. And as you're doing that, as you're watching your breathing coming in and going out, if there are any other thoughts in your mind, any emotions in your heart, just put them aside, let them go. You can always pick them up again later if you need to. But for now, just give yourself a break from those thoughts and those feelings, and just be aware of the breath as it's coming in, going out, one breath after another. And if your mind is distracted by something else, a thought, a sound, or whatever, just let go of that other object and return your awareness to your breathing. Even if you have to do that again and again, don't be impatient or frustrated. Be patient and just keep coming back to the breath again and again. So observing the breath in this way puts our mind into a kind of a neutral state, not really positive, not really negative. And when we engage in Dharma activities like listening to a teaching or doing meditation, we are advised to have a positive motivation, a good motivation for what we're doing. And some of you may be familiar with what we call bodhicitta, the aspiration to become fully enlightened so that we can help all living beings. If you've heard of that and you're comfortable with that, you can bring that into your mind as your motivation for participating in this session. But if you're not familiar with that motivation or not comfortable with it, if you're not sure if that's really what you want to aim for, then try to bring in some kind of altruistic motivation, meaning wanting to help others. So, for example, you might think, I am listening to this talk, participating in this session, because I want to work on myself and become a better person, a kinder person, more helpful for others. So that's just a suggestion, but feel free to use your own ideas, your own thoughts and feelings to bring about some kind of motivation of wanting to help not just yourself, but others as well. So now I'd like to ask you to think of a disturbing emotion that you sometimes have. It could be anger or jealousy or greed or selfishness. And when you think of it, try to do it in a way that you don't actually get caught up in that experience. But you might try to remember a time when you did have that kind of experience, in a very rather intense way, a strong way. And now ask yourself if that disturbing or negative emotion is there all the time, every single minute, every single second of your existence. Can you think of a time when you didn't feel that way? You didn't have that particular negative state of mind? can you think of a time when you had the opposite experience? Like instead of anger, you felt patient, kind, compassionate, or instead of jealousy, you were able to feel happy for somebody else's good fortune, or instead of fear and anxiety, you may have felt courageous, confident. So now, are you able to recognize that that negative, disturbing emotion isn't a permanent, fixed part of you? Something that's always there, like really solid and concrete. It's not like that, but instead it's something that comes and goes. Sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. And sometimes you even have the opposite experience, very positive, uplifting experience. So this is what Buddhism says. Our mind is very complex. It's made up of so many different types of experiences. Some of them are negative, like anger and jealousy, greed and selfishness. But we also have positive states of mind, positive feelings like love and compassion and courage and unselfishness, willing to go out of our way to help somebody else. And each of these experiences is momentary in the sense that it comes and goes, sometimes there, sometimes not. None of them are fixed, permanent, always there. But we can work on our mind and learn to decrease the negative, disturbing aspects of the mind and increase the positive and beneficial parts of the mind so that they are there more of the time, more often. And in fact, we can learn to just bring them up anytime we want. So see if you can accept that, if that makes sense to you. So that's a kind of introduction to our main topic of this series of talks, which is awakening a kind heart, learning how to have more kindness and other positive, beneficial states of mind. And so today I'm going to focus on one such positive state of mind, which is what we call loving kindness. And so I prepared a file, a sheet that will be shown on the screen. And also it can be, I think you can put it in the chat box for people to download and have to use again on your own if you wish. Yeah, so I'll talk for a while and explain. I've sort of put together a lot of material. I don't know if I'll have time to cover all of it today, but whatever I don't cover today, I'll cover next week. And I will try to leave some time at the end for a little bit of meditation and then question and answer. So if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer those. So Patty, you can put the file up on the screen whenever you can. Okay, so I mentioned already last week these what are called 4 immeasurable thoughts or attitudes that are found in all Buddhist traditions. And they are there at the top of the screen: loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So we have 4 more talks, 4 more sessions. So I'll, I think there should be time to cover all 4 of these. So in the Tibetan tradition, these are known as immeasurable thoughts. And the reason they use that term is because ideally we try to cultivate these thoughts or emotions, feelings in an immeasurable way, meaning for all living beings without exception, because according to Buddhism, there's so many beings that we can't count them. We can count the number of human beings on this planet, but there are more beings than human beings. There's animals, fish, birds, insects. And also Buddhism believes in other kinds of beings like spirits and devas. So there's many, many, many beings that we can't actually see. And ideally, we generate these positive attitudes towards all of them. Well, of course, that's a big, difficult thing to do. We can't do it all at once, but slowly and gradually, if we continue developing these attitudes, we can eventually have them for everybody. Another reason for the term immeasurable is because if we do work on this, if we do try to cultivate immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, and so on, then we create an immeasurable amount of positive energy or merit or good karma, which is one of the factors we need to be able to progress along the spiritual path and eventually reach enlightenment. So we create an immeasurable amount of good energy by doing these practices. And we also purify an immeasurable amount of negative energy, like bad karma that we created in the past. So we can clear that away, purify that by doing these practices. So it's a really good thing to do for ourselves and for our spiritual practice. And in the Theravada tradition, that is the tradition of Buddhism found in countries like Thailand and Sri Lanka, Burma, and so on, they use a different term for these 4. The Sanskrit or Pali term is Brahma Vihara, and that can translate as divine abodes, meaning that when we cultivate these states of mind, we are like in a divine place because they're so beautiful and so, really, really spiritual states of mind. So there's a prayer that, there's a number of different prayers expressing these 4 immeasurable thoughts, but this is one that's quite short and simple. It says, may all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that is free from suffering. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment and anger that hold some close and others distant. So there's 4 lines in that prayer, and each line corresponds to one of the 4 immeasurable thoughts. So I'll go through these 4. Today we'll start with the first one, loving kindness, and explain them. And if you like these practices, then that prayer is a really nice way to keep them in mind. It's easy to memorize. After reading it a number of times, you'll know it by heart. And it's something you could use in a daily meditation practice, or to start your day in the morning. Recite that prayer and really try to generate those 4 thoughts in your mind, as to take with you into your day, to work or wherever you go, whatever you do, to have these 4 thoughts in your mind in your interactions with others. So the first of these 4 then is loving kindness. Metta is the Pali term, and so in the Theravada tradition, they use that term. They talk about metta meditation on metta. And it's a little tricky sometimes to find a good translation for that. Some people translate it as love, but the word love is so complicated. And the feeling of love is also often quite complicated in our relationships with others. Love can sometimes be mixed with other things, like attachment, clinging, possessiveness, and having expectations of the other person. Sometimes it's almost like a business contract. Okay, I will be nice to you as long as you are nice to me and you do what I want you to do. But if you don't, then forget it. Goodbye. I'm not going to love you anymore. So to distinguish metta, what the Buddha spoke of as metta, from these other forms of love, then the term loving kindness is used by some teachers, and I really like that. I'll mention a bit later a few other alternate translations if you don't like that one. So this particular immeasurable thought is expressed in the first line of the prayer. It says, "May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness." So that's the meaning of this particular state of mind of loving kindness. It's the wish for others to be happy, to have happiness. But sentient beings includes oneself too. So we are also a sentient being. So we need to include ourselves when we generate this beautiful state of mind, wishing ourselves to be happy and wishing others to be happy. So it's something we already feel. It is a natural quality in our mind. So with certain people and certain beings, for example, pets, sometimes people, many people have pets, and it's kind of very easy to love pets. You usually don't get into arguments with your pets, and your pets don't usually make a lot of demands of you other than, just having food and water and a place to sleep. But so the relationships with pets is pretty uncomplicated. And so it's kind of easy to have just love for them. I mean, you can get annoyed at them sometimes as well, but that usually doesn't last very long. So when we have that feeling of love or loving kindness towards another person or another being, then we regard them as kind of dear, precious. We care about them. We want them to be happy, to have what they need to be happy, food and clothes, and well, not in the case of pets. They don't need clothes. They're pretty simple. But yeah, whatever they need in order to be happy, to be healthy, to be relaxed, and feel safe and comfortable and so on and so forth. So that kind of feeling, okay? So it's something we do already have, we do already feel. And the point in Buddhism is we want to cultivate that feeling. We want to increase that feeling and learn to have it for more and more people and beings, and eventually including everybody. So that the bullet points there, it says, the first one just describes what it is, wishing oneself and others to be happy. And the second one, it says, the best example is the love of a mother or father for their child. So that's, if you are a parent, if you have brought children into the world, then the feeling you have for your child or your children is this kind of love, or the love we feel for pets, for animals. And the third bullet point gives a few alternate terms. Some people might be uncomfortable with the term love or even loving kindness. So there are a few options there: friendliness, care, concern, or simply kindness. So one of those terms might be one that you are more comfortable with. So feel free to find a term that works for you. And so the Buddha really emphasized having this quality, very much part of his teachings. And there are meditations one can do to, cultivate this feeling of loving kindness and grow it. So we have it more and more and more. It does take time and effort to develop loving kindness. And the Buddha mentioned some benefits if we do cultivate. And if we know about the benefits, then we might have more energy, more enthusiasm to work on cultivating loving kindness. So some of the benefits mentioned in the Buddhist scriptures are there on the screen. Happy mind and healthy body. And you don't have to just believe the Buddha. You can see for yourself. When you do have this feeling of love for another person, then it's such a nice feeling. You feel good, you feel happy. So it's kind of an easy way to bring happiness into our mind, into our heart. And healthy body. So when our mind is happy, because our mind and our body are interconnected. So when our mind is happy, in a good state, then that will affect our health. And I think there's scientific research that shows that, if your mind is positive, then you have a stronger immune system. Your body will be more able to fight off or protect yourself from illness. The second point is that others will love, help, and protect you. So again, we can see that in our experience. If you're not a very loving person, you may not have much experience of that. But if you know somebody who's loving, who really cares a lot about others and is always, kind and helpful and concerned about others, then you can notice how people react to that. They like that person. They are attracted to that person. And so if that person is ever in need of help, then people will go and help them because they value that person. They think that person's really precious, and they want to make sure that person stays around and is healthy and doesn't disappear. So people will be more likely to help you if you are a loving person yourself, and protect you. Yeah, again, because they value you. And so they see that you're doing a lot of good. And so if you're ever in trouble, if somebody's trying to attack you or steal from you or whatever, they're going to protect you and make sure that, bad things don't happen to you. So when we cultivate loving kindness, ideally it shouldn't be because we want to get something good out of it. We want people to be nice to us, but nevertheless, that's what happens. Yeah, we will experience benefits if we are more loving and kind, as opposed to if we're kind of mean and nasty and selfish and never help anybody, and instead, abuse people and use people and so on. So if we're like that, then people are going to be put off. They're not going to want to be around us. They're not going to want to be our friends. And so it's good to realize that, yeah, the way people respond to us depends on the way we are, the way we behave and treat them. The third bullet point says, good sleep, pleasant dreams, and wake up refreshed. So one reason for sleep problems is if we have a lot of anger, if we're angry at people, we get into conflicts with people, and then, we try to go to sleep at night, our mind is still working, is still thinking about the anger and the conflict, and that keeps us awake. And so if we're more familiar with kindness, kind thoughts, kind behavior, we won't have so many conflicts to begin with. And if we just have this attitude, our general attitude is caring about others, then that enables our mind to be calm and relaxed. And so it'll be easy to go to sleep. And our dreams, instead of nightmares, scary nightmares where people are chasing us and monsters are trying to kill us, we'll have pleasant dreams. And then wake up in the morning refreshed. So these are things that Buddha pointed out, and so we can check them for ourselves in our own experience. And the fourth bullet point says you will look radiant and relaxed and be able to communicate easily with others. So I've noticed that I sometimes I'll meet a person or just observe a person, and I can kind of see in their facial expression, their eyes, their mouth, even their body language. You can see if somebody is kind, is familiar with kindness and is a kind person. I feel that way. I feel it's something you can see in others. And so when you see somebody who shows those signs of kindness, you feel relaxed with them. You feel it. I do anyway. I feel attracted and relaxed with such people, as opposed to somebody who has a kind of angry look on their face and tension in their jaw. Somebody who looks like that is like, I don't want to get too close to that person. A little scary there. So again, this has to do with how we appear to others and how others will feel in regard, in relation to us. And the next point says, calm mind, better concentration, more efficient. So if we tend to have a lot of anger, which is the opposite of loving kindness, so if we're angry a lot, anger is very disturbing to our mind. It makes our mind disturbed and unpeaceful. And then when we try to meditate, if we try to develop concentration, or even if you're not trying to meditate, but just trying to concentrate on your work, you have some work you have to do, you might find it's really hard to concentrate because your mind keeps thinking those angry thoughts. That person who did such and such to you, and how you're going to get back at them, and whatever. So it's very disturbing to have anger in our mind. So if our mind is more familiar with loving kindness, it has an effect of calming our mind. And so when we do try to concentrate, we'll be able to concentrate better in our meditation or in our work, and we'll get more done. And then the last bullet point says a peaceful and clear mind at the time of death. So if during our life we familiarize ourselves with loving kindness, and that becomes kind of our normal way of being, our default mode, then at the time of death, when we're leaving this life, then it'll be easier to have a calm and peaceful mind at the time of death. And I'm sure everybody does want that. Nobody wants to die screaming and fearful and angry. That wouldn't be a nice way to end our life. Whether you believe in another life or not, Buddhism says, we don't just end at the time of death, but it's like a doorway to another life. So our mind will leave this body and then take birth in another body. And so the time of death is quite important. We want that time to be positive. We want our mind to be in a positive state as it's leaving this life and going to the next one. And that will ensure that our next life will be a good one, a positive one. So cultivating positive states of mind during our life, like loving kindness, will enable us to be peaceful and calm at the time of death. And I saw that with my mother. I was with my mother when she was dying, and she was a very, very kind and caring person. She just gave her life to her family. And I was quite amazed that when she was dying, she didn't show any fear, any anxiety, any attachment, to her house and her things and her kids and whatever she was leaving behind. She was just like, okay, I'm ready to go. And very kind right up to the end, very showing so much kindness to the people around her. So I could really see that the way you live your life, how you are during your life, will affect the way you are at the time of death. So that's from the Buddhist scriptures. And then I've heard and read that in recent years, there have been studies in Western science. Western scientists, researchers have done studies on kindness and compassion, and they have found benefits. So here's a few. The first one is getting the helpers high, meaning that when we do things to help others, then there's more endorphins in our system, and endorphins make us feel good. So there's actually biological, physiological evidence or basis for that good feeling you have. Yeah. So helping others makes you feel better. And also, next one is you feel more useful. You have a greater sense of purpose in life. When you think about others and care about others and do things to help others, you feel, life is meaningful rather than hopeless and meaningless and so on. And less stress, it's always helpful. Stress can be a cause of a lot of physical illnesses and other kinds of problems. And the fourth point says kindness is contagious. Yeah, so if you do an act of kindness, like helping some stranger that you meet in the street or in the mall or train station or whatever, if other people notice you being kind, then they will be, usually feel, oh, that's a nice thing to do. What a nice guy. What a nice person. And then they will be more inspired to do something kind as well. So your act of kindness might inspire a number of other people to do acts of kindness. And then those acts of kindness, if they're observed or heard about by others, will inspire more acts of kindness. So then it becomes like a ripple effect. So one act of kindness could inspire 10, 20, 50, 100 acts of kindness. So that's a good thing. More and more people get to be kind, and more people get to be the recipients of kindness. Yeah. So finally it says, in short, we'll be happier and healthier. And so that's just talking about the benefits we get, but then other people or whoever it is we are being kind to, people, animals, and so on, then they benefit too. Yeah. So it's beneficial for everybody. So now we look at the obstacles. So, yeah, hopefully you feel inspired and you want to be more kind. But it's not always easy. Sometimes it may be easy, but sometimes it may be very difficult. And it's the last thing you want to do is to be kind to somebody. And so this is from the Buddhist teachings, that there are obstacles, things that block our kindness. But fortunately, there are antidotes. There are things we can do about these. So in the Buddhist scriptures, they mention a far enemy and a near enemy for each of the four immeasurables. So the far enemy is like the opposite state of mind to the one we're trying to develop. So for loving kindness, the far enemy is hatred. And hatred is, I think we all know what that feels like. There's all, times when we feel hatred. If somebody has harmed us, for example, or if they've harmed somebody we care about, or they're just doing horrible things in general, probably right now, there's a lot of people who feel that for Putin and his ministers, the people helping him in making this war happen and doing these horrible things to others. So hatred is a pretty ugly state of mind. It's not, I can't imagine anybody really enjoying that feeling of hatred. Like, oh, I love to feel hatred. I want to feel hatred as much as I can. Well, I don't know if anybody can feel that way. It's not a nice feeling to have. It's painful. It's ugly. And there's also kind of milder forms of this that are probably more frequent. Anger, like sometimes we just kind of blow up and get angry at somebody or something that happens that we don't want to happen. And then even lower level forms of this might be aversion, dislike, just like, oh, I don't like that color. I don't like that kind of food. I don't like that smell. Yeah. So just a feeling of aversion or dislike, or even irritation, like irritated by a person's tone of voice or the way they laugh or the way they dress or yeah. So there's kind of a spectrum of different feelings. They're all kind of the same kind of feeling, but some are stronger and some are milder. So I think we all know these feelings. We all have these feelings. And so when any of these feelings is present in our mind, it's not possible to feel loving kindness at the same time. Okay, so if we're angry at somebody, at that moment of time, it's impossible to have love for that person. Our mind can change, fortunately. So, at one moment we can feel angry at the person, at another moment feel love for them. So that's definitely possible. But at the same time, at the same moment, we can't have both towards the same person or the same being. So that's something that blocks our loving kindness, something that prevents us from having loving kindness. So there are remedies. There's lots of remedies in the Buddhist teachings for anger, for hatred. There's books, whole books in English, just about how to work with anger. There's one by His Holiness the Dalai Lama called Healing Anger, one by Venerable Thupten Chödrön called Working with Anger, one by Thich Nhat Hanh. I haven't read it, but it's probably full of good advice on how to work with anger. So there's just a few here, remedies for anger. Number one is just to recognize how painful it is to feel hatred or anger. So for me, that one is really helpful because, at times when we're angry, we may feel justified in being angry, like that person has done something just completely unforgivable, and I'm right to be angry at them. I should be angry at them. This is the appropriate response to that person, right? And so if we have that kind of self-justifying attitude about our anger, then we will just stay with our anger. We'll continue being angry and thinking, it's fine to be this way, and we don't want to get rid of it. We don't want to stop it, change it. And so it's really good. I mean, for me, this is really helpful to just see how painful it is, how disturbing it is to have this state of mind of anger or hatred. One woman once told me, she kind of came to this awareness on her own. She had a friend, and something happened between her and her friend, and they became like enemies. They were angry at each other. They stopped talking to each other and stopped seeing each other. And they still lived in the same town, different parts of the town, but she just had no more contact with that person. And then at some point she realized that, she kept thinking about that person with anger, with hatred, and, very negative thoughts and feelings. And then one day she realized the anger that I have towards that person isn't harming them, because I'm not seeing them. We're having no meetings, no interaction, no communication. So this anger in my heart isn't harming the other person. She's the one I want to harm. I want her to suffer, but my anger is making me suffer. I'm the one who's suffering as a result of my anger, and not the other person. And so she realized, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? This is crazy. Yeah. And it's quite an insight to have, to realize how we make ourselves suffer by being angry or having hatred or aversion or whatever it is. It's harming us. It may not harm the other person at all, but it's harming ourselves. And so that can be like a wake-up call to feel, I don't want to do this. I want to be happy. I don't want to be miserable. Why am I making myself miserable? And so if we can recognize that, that can give us the enthusiasm, the energy to do something about our anger, about our hatred, and learn to let it go rather than hang on to it. And I guess some people do hang on to negative feelings, sometimes for years. I remember once I was teaching a meditation retreat on working with different disturbing emotions, such as anger. And one woman said that her mother was really angry at her father. They had a divorce, but her mother, for years continued to hold on to anger and bitterness towards her ex-husband. And this just went on for years and years and years. She didn't want to let go of those feelings. She didn't want to forgive him and let go of those feelings. And so the daughter was saying it was so painful to her, for her, to see how much suffering her mother had because of these bitter, angry feelings. And she really wished her mother could change. But we can't change somebody else. But we can change ourselves. And that's the point. The point is to recognize that we make ourselves suffer by holding on to anger and hatred and these other negative emotions. So, yeah, is that what we want to do? We do have a choice. We can change our mind, change our attitude, and overcome these negative feelings. So number 2 says, try to understand the other person's point of view. So this is a really helpful method to overcome anger. Kind of imagine yourself in the other person's shoes. We have that expression. What do things look like from their point of view? What's going on in their mind? How are they thinking? How are they feeling? I mean, we can't know 100% for sure, but we can guess, we can imagine. Like if the person, maybe that person is showing anger, so then we can understand they are angry, okay? They have anger about something. So why are they angry? What's making them angry? So just try to understand. And this can be really helpful because, sometimes there could be reasons why the person is feeling the way they do and acting the way they do. They may not be good reasons, but at least there are reasons. Like, maybe the person was abused when they were a child. They had a really difficult childhood. They suffered a lot. They were harmed a lot when they were a child. And so that left them damaged, traumatized, bitter, and maybe wanting to get revenge. So that might be one reason why they're behaving the way they are. So this is just something to explore, what's going on with the other person to make them the way they are, do the things they're doing, and so on. So that can actually help us have more compassion for the other person, understanding that they're not happy, they're suffering. And also if we bring in our Buddhist understanding and how in everybody's minds there are lots of delusions, afflictive emotions that we usually don't have any control over. They just come up and take over our mind, and then people act them out and do all kinds of harmful, destructive things. And so, and that's really sad. It's really painful that that happens to people. They're like under the control of their delusions. So a Buddha would look at such a person and just feel so much compassion. They don't feel angry, hateful, but they just say, oh, I want to help that person. They're suffering so much and they're creating so much bad karma. They're going to suffer even more in the future. I really, really want to help them to change their way of being. So I find it helpful to try to think of the mind of a Buddha, how a Buddha would look at that person. I don't have the mind of a Buddha, but try to imagine how a Buddha would look at that person. And that can give me an opening, to have more understanding, more compassion. And then number 3, this one is helpful too, because it says contemplate that they have good qualities too, and their bad qualities are impermanent. So when we're angry at somebody, we have anger or hatred towards someone, what happens is we tend to see that person as 100% bad. And like they don't have any good qualities at all. They're only bad. They only do bad things. They never do anything good. And I don't think there's anybody like that. Nobody's 100% bad and never does anything good. Everybody has some good qualities. So even, like these leaders who make war, cause a lot of suffering for others, they must have family members, a wife, children, parents, friends, pets that they care about, that they are kind to, they show affection towards. I mean, everybody has kindness. Maybe they don't have it all the time, but at certain times, at certain moments, they have kindness. So that can help too, just to recognize that the person isn't 100% bad 100% of the time with 0 good qualities. And any negative qualities they have are not permanent. They're impermanent. Now, that's the Buddhist point of view. And I mentioned that earlier, that these negative qualities like anger and hatred, and they come and go in our mind. They're not there all the time, and they won't be there forever. Buddhism says every person, every being has Buddha nature, the potential to become completely free of all the negative qualities and fully developed in all positive qualities. So everyone one day will become like the Buddha. And it's helpful to think of multiple lives, not just this life, because some people may not get very far in this lifetime. They may spend their entire life, like Hitler, for example, right to the end of his life. He was still involved in making war and killing people and gassing the Jews and horrible, horrible things. And then he killed himself. So in this lifetime, he didn't change. But Buddhism says, but there are other lives. Okay, so we have many lifetimes in which we can work on ourselves and change ourselves and overcome our negative qualities and become more positive. So those are just a few. I'm just gonna turn this off for a moment so I don't look fuzzy. Okay. Yeah, so those are a few remedies we can use to deal with anger and hatred. There's many more, and it does take time. I mean, ideally you read about them and you think about them and you meditate on them. It does take time to get familiar with these other ways of thinking that are kind of counteract anger and hatred. But they do work. They definitely do work. I can say with confidence. They've really helped me. And it's so worthwhile because I'm convinced that anger and hatred and even aversion and irritation, that these are painful states of mind. I don't want to feel them. So I really do want to free my mind from them. And I know that it is possible if I apply these remedies. Okay, the next says the near enemy. So the near enemy, this means it's kind of an enemy of loving kindness, an obstacle to loving kindness, but it's near in the sense that it can look like loving kindness. It can be confused with loving kindness. So the near enemy is attachment. Attachment is when, well, we know what attachment is. We get attached to people and we feel this is my friend, my partner, my child, and it's kind of like they belong to me and we have rights over them, and we don't want them to disappear. We want them to be there as much as possible, because we enjoy being with them. We get a lot of joy, a lot of happiness, a lot of pleasure with that person, with that relationship. So we want it to go on and on and on and on and never stop and never disappear. So attachment is related to our sense of self, our I, our ego. Like, I want to be happy and this person makes me happy. Therefore, I want to include them in my world, in my life, as much as I can. So attachment comes from ego, kind of self-centeredness. And the kind of love we want to develop, loving kindness, metta, that the Buddha talked about, is not about me. It's about them. It's about the other person. I want you to be happy. You are precious and valuable. You deserve to be happy. I want you to be happy. I want to do what I can to make you happy. So the focus is on the other person or the other people rather than on what we are going to get out of it. Now that's hard to do. We probably all do feel that way, at least some, especially parents. You bring children into the world and they're not able to do much for you. Of course, you feel a lot of joy having them, but it's pretty much unconditional love, unconditional care. Although attachment, I think it'd be almost impossible to have a child and not be attached to them. Very hard. But we can at least try to recognize what is attachment and what is love. They are two different things. They're not the same thing. And then gradually work on reducing the attachment and building up or increasing the love. Not easy to do, but it's possible. So some remedies for attachment. One is to just see how it's unrealistic. Unrealistic. One way it's unrealistic is because when we have attachment to somebody, we want them to be there forever. We want this relationship to last forever and never come to an end. And that's simply not possible because we don't live forever and the other person doesn't live forever. And so permanence, eternal, living happily ever after is just unrealistic. That's probably the main mistaken idea we have with attachment. And it disturbs our mind because, for example, a friend of mine who's a nun, before becoming a nun, she was married, and then her husband died, and she eventually found her way to Buddhism and became a Buddhist nun. But she said after she started learning Buddhism and meditating, thinking about her life with her husband, she realized that she was never completely relaxed with her husband because there was always this underlying fear that she might lose him, that he might stop loving her, leave her, love somebody else, or die, which is what actually happened. He died. But that fear comes from attachment. Yeah, I want him to be there forever. I don't want to lose him. It makes us anxious and unable to just relax and enjoy our time together. And I remember another woman telling me that as well, that she recognized when she started meditating, she recognized this fear in relation to her husband, that he might start loving her, she might do something that would upset him, and then he would leave her. So there's a lot of fear and anxiety there. So that's one way we can see how attachment disturbs our mind and makes it hard for us to be really peaceful. So if we can see that attachment doesn't really help, and it's unrealistic, and it's disturbing, then we'd be more likely to want to decrease our attachment. So one of the best ways to decrease attachment is thinking about impermanence. So that's number 2 there. It says, recall the impermanent nature of yourself, the objects of your attachment, and attachment itself. So this is a big topic in Buddhism. Buddha spoke a lot about impermanence, which means everything is subject to change. Our body, our mind, our life, other people, the things, our home, our belongings, the world itself, all of these things are impermanent. They're changing. They're not fixed, solid, frozen, unchanging. They're changing. That's simply their nature. We can't stop it. We can't make it not so. But we can accept it. We can come to accept impermanence. So Buddha said it's very, very important to do that, to be aware of and accept the impermanent nature of things. And so that will help us realize that attachment is counterproductive. It's asking for the impossible. I want this to last forever and never change. It's impossible. So it's crazy to have that kind of attitude. So the more we become familiar with impermanence, then the more our attachment will decrease, and we'll be able to accept changes when they do happen without being so shocked and upset. Okay, so then the third one, this isn't from the Buddhist scriptures so much, in relation to loving kindness. It's more just my own addition. Self-centeredness. That's a big obstacle to loving kindness, because if we think about me as the most important person in the world, the center of the world, the center of the universe, everything relies on me, everything depends on me, everything circles around me. So then if that's very strong self-centeredness, then when it comes to other people, then we might just use them for our own happiness and not really care about them at all. I heard a story once, and I don't know if this is a true story, if it's just a myth, but it's kind of shocking. There was a couple, a man and a woman, who were planning to get married. And the man made the woman sign a contract promising that she would not gain weight after they got married. And if she did gain weight, then he could divorce her. So when I heard that, that's not love. That's attachment, self-centered attachment. I want you to always look like that and not change, not get fatter. And if you do, goodbye. I don't have to, stay with you anymore. So yeah, that's like, if it's true, if it's a true story, that's like 100% attachment, no love. Yeah. Maybe a tiny bit of love, but very fragile love. Yeah. So if we're strongly self-centered, ego-centered, everything is about me, then not much room for genuine love, loving kindness towards others. Or we love them as long as they please us, do what we want, give us what we want. But if they don't, then we feel justified in being angry at them, splitting off from them, chucking them out, or even abusing them, harming them. So that's how self-centeredness can obstruct loving kindness. Maybe I'll stop here. We can talk more about this next week, because I did want to leave a bit of time for some meditation and also Q&A. So, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, so there's different methods, different meditations for developing loving kindness. So one is to get in touch with the feeling of loving kindness, and then bring to mind individuals. It's good to do one person at a time so we really feel it. And then just say to ourselves, may you be happy. I wish you to be happy. Yeah. So let's try that just for a short time. And it's recommended that we start with easy objects. Don't start with someone you hate. That will be difficult. Start with someone that's easy to love, and then build up gradually. And the more we get familiar with the feeling of loving kindness, then we can start to feel it for even people who are strangers, and then eventually even the difficult ones. So make yourself comfortable. Try to keep your back straight, but your body relaxed. Focus your mind, just in case there are thoughts that have come into your mind that aren't related to the meditation that we're doing. So put those aside. And have the determination to do the best you can to stay focused on the meditation. So, to get in touch with the feeling of loving kindness, think of someone that you do have that feeling for, easily, spontaneously. So, if you're a parent, it could be one of your children, or if you're a pet owner, it could be a pet. It could be someone else's child that you find very lovable. So bring to mind someone or some being towards whom you have this feeling quite easily. And it's, if you can, have a mental picture of that person or being. And then see if you can allow that feeling of loving kindness towards that person or being to come up in your heart. It's a feeling of really caring about that other being, wanting them to be happy, wanting to do what you can to ensure their happiness. So now let's see if we can have this feeling for someone else. So bring to mind another person, another being, but someone you find easy to like, not someone you dislike. And again, try to have a mental picture of that person. You can imagine them in front of you, or just think of them where they are right now. And focus on that person and contemplate that this person wants to be happy, just as you want to be happy. And wish them to be happy. So it's helpful to say to yourself some words like, may you be happy, or I wish you to be happy, or how nice it would be if you could be happy. So you can choose your own words. Just repeat those words to yourself a few times, focusing on that person, and try to really feel it, a genuine wish for that person to be happy. And then to enhance the feeling, you could imagine giving something to the person or doing something that would bring them happiness. It could even just be smiling and talking to them in a friendly way, asking them how they are. And imagine how the person responds. They probably smile and look happy. So that's just to give you an idea on how to meditate on loving kindness and increase loving kindness. And depending on how much time you have, you can spend more time bringing to mind more people. And they do say, start with the people you already like, your family, your friends, pets, and so on. And then when you're more familiar with the practice, you can start thinking of people who are a little more distant from you, like neighbors, shopkeepers, where you go shopping, bus drivers, and so on. And then with more familiarity, you can start bringing in the people you have difficulty with, people you might find annoying or irritating. So by working on it in a gradual way like that, then, your mind gets more and more familiar with that feeling, that state of mind. And then even when it comes to really difficult people, really annoying or destructive people, it'll be easier. And eventually, after a lot of practice and a lot of time, it's possible to have this feeling for everyone, without leaving anybody out. That's the goal, but of course it does take time. We have a few minutes left, so any questions, you can raise your hand. Oh, one other thing, we just did a very short meditation there, but it happens sometimes that if people are in a group of people and they're doing loving kindness meditation, or if they're trying to do it on their own, trying to do loving kindness meditation, they don't feel anything. And then they think, did I do something wrong? Or is there something wrong with me? I'm supposed to feel something, but I don't. So don't worry about that. If you do feel something, if you do feel a feeling of loving kindness, that's great. But if you don't feel it, that's fine. That's okay. It's not necessary. Because just by doing this practice, this exercise of thinking of someone, wishing them to be happy, even just saying those words, may you be happy, I wish you to be happy, that itself is acquainting our mind with loving kindness. And the actual feeling may not come up right away, but if you keep doing it, you keep working on it, sooner or later you will feel it. I heard one teacher, I don't know if I mentioned this last week, one teacher giving a talk, and he said that when he first started meditating, he learned this practice of loving kindness. He didn't feel anything. He was just saying the words, but he didn't feel anything. And he kept doing it. I'm glad that he didn't give up. He kept doing it. And he said it took him 5 years. Actually, what he said was, it took him 5 years to really mean what he was saying. Yeah, to mean the words, but he still didn't feel it. It took another 5 years to actually feel it, to have that feeling of loving kindness. So I really respected him for saying that, for being so honest, for one thing, but also that he kept doing the practice. He didn't give up. Some people might give up and say, this doesn't work, or I can't do it. It doesn't work for me. So he didn't give up. He kept doing. And eventually it paid off. Eventually he did have the feeling. Yeah, so so don't worry if the feeling isn't there right away. If you just keep doing it, keep working at it, I'm sure sooner or later it will come.
Oh, Venerable Sangye Khadro, I will share that I'm a notorious grudge holder. And I have to say that over the years, I'm not nearly as much of one. I'm not going to say that I'm still not a little bit of one, but I think the loving kindness has helped relax that a wee bit.
Good. I'll tell another story too, that I heard from one woman. Um, she worked for American Express in Europe, one European city, because she was bilingual. So her job was to answer the phone and talk with clients of American Express who were using American Express and were having some problems, some difficulties. So she had to deal with them, and they were often angry. You can imagine. And she said that initially, when she would hear the voice and hear the anger in the voice, it would trigger her anger. So she would get angry, and then she would speak to the person, in an angry way, and they'd have this angry conversation, which wasn't at all pleasant or helpful. So then, after learning the loving kindness meditation, she would try to bring that in. So if she heard an angry voice, she would just say to herself, "May you be happy, may you be happy, may you be happy," even if it's not what she really felt. But just saying those words, and thinking of this other person, the person on the other end of the phone. And she said it helped her to stay calm. It helped her to avoid getting angry herself. So she was able to stay more calm and more friendly. And she would notice that if her tone of voice, her way of speaking to the person was more calm and friendly, the other person would calm down as well. And so then they would have a nicer conversation. And so that's, again, a kind of example of how it can be used in your daily life. Even if you don't really feel it, but just to say those words, just to say that to yourself and try to wish the other person happy. It can have beneficial effects, both for you and the other person.
And I think there's one question in the chat.
Okay. Is merit absolutely required for advancement? Well, merit is like positive energy that we get from doing positive actions, like trying to develop loving kindness and so on. So when we do good things, positive things, we create this positive energy. And yes, in the Buddhist teachings, if we want to make progress, our mind to transform and gradually attain the various realizations of the path, the stages of the path, merit is necessary, yes. But it's also the cause of happiness here and now, because when we do positive things like trying to cultivate loving kindness or trying to cultivate calm abiding, whatever it is that's good, then there's immediate benefits. So we don't have to think, oh, I'm just going to get the benefit way in the future, long way off. But even now, it might be very subtle, not so huge and obvious, but some benefit even now in this life. Okay, so we'll have to stop there. And I didn't finish everything I wanted to talk about with loving kindness. So we'll finish next week, and then I'll go on to the next of the four immeasurables, which is compassion. Another really beautiful state of mind. So let's just take a few moments to make a dedication of what we have done. We started off with a positive motivation, altruistic motivation, and then spending this time together, listening, thinking about, doing some meditation on this beautiful topic of loving kindness. So we've created some merit, positive energy, and now let's share the merit with others, which is actually a way of increasing our merit, creating even more merit when we share it with others. So by the merit, the positive energy we've created, may it bring peace and happiness to all living beings everywhere, especially in places where there's conflict, war right now. So may this positive energy ease the anger, the hatred, the violence, the suffering, bring about peace, happiness, well-being for all the people involved. And may it help everyone's mind to transform and learn to have more loving kindness and compassion and these other positive qualities, and help others rather than harming them. Okay, so thank you for joining this class, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much, Venerable Sangye Khadro. Thank you.
Thank you for hosting and organizing.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Venerable.
Thank you very
Thank you.
Thank you.